So the first piece is going to be the headgear. Defense is prioritized here, and the best value you can get out of that is going to be 4%. And I always do exhaustion recovery secondary. That's going to be because if you run out of exhaustion, basically if you run out of stamina and you get exhausted, so to say, at that point, this is when that activates. It's going to be how fast that exhaustion gray bar goes across to recover your stamina back to the full bar, allowing you to do things like you normally would. So I prioritize that because giving a longer period of exhaust where you can't recover your stamina gives the opponent a lot more time to punish you if you did end up giving away your stamina at some point, which a lot of times can be unavoidable if you happen to get parried or they're a disabler and are using attacks that are going to damage your stamina. That happens even if you're playing very well. It's still most likely going to occur. You have to attack, which is going to use stamina as well. Debuff resistance, it can be used, but overall, exhaustion recovery is going to be the better choice. If you really feel confident that you will never get exhausted with your stamina, then go ahead and do debuff. But really, I would stay exhaustion just to be on the safe side. Second piece here is going to be the chest. Max stat value you can get for defense out of that is going to be 6%. And then secondary, I went for defense. I allowed duration to be negative. Some people are going to disagree with that. However, I have a very in-depth explanation as to why that is. And the reason why that is because when you proc your revenge, when you activate it, when you get it and then activate it, it auto parries any incoming attacks if you time it right, and it also gives you a health gain as well as a little temporary shield bar as well. So every time you get that, you're going to be regaining health and you're going to be allowing yourself to go on longer. However, if your duration is high, during the time that you are in revenge, you can't be gaining towards your next revenge proc. So that means that it's going to be, you're going to have to wait for your whole revenge mode to go out in the current one. Then you're going to have to stay alive long enough to gain revenge again, which means you're just postponing how long you can regain more health each time and get that auto parry effect, and of course everything that just comes with proccing revenge. So that's why duration is low. And defense, you want that to be high so that while you're in your revenge mode, even if it is a small amount of time, you want your defense to be higher so that way incoming attacks won't take as much of your health while you're in revenge, so that you'll have more left when that revenge goes away to try and stay alive, block attacks, take a little damage here and there if you have to try and get that revenge to proc again. Because of that, there are also going to be a very in-depth explanation to the other pieces that are going to involve revenge stats. Third piece is going to be the shoulders. Here, again, defense prioritized, of course. Max value you're going to get out of that is 5.4%. And stamina cost reduction is currently negative. That's because if your stamina cost reduction is positive, basically you're going to be able to do more attacks. However, in your downtime, your stamina regen will be low if you're going to do prioritized defense, which you most definitely should. Wouldn't ever want that to be negative. You don't get a good enough increase out of the balance stat pieces because they really aren't going to make a big difference when other people just plain have much better attack and defense than you outright. That's going to just be an advantage in their corner. So stamina regen high. I'm going to want to do a few attacks here. I can get off a good 60 to 80 damage off one stamina bar if I'm just keep going, even if I don't give myself too much time to regen. So the cost reduction really ends up not quite being as important as stamina regen, because a lot of times when you're trying to handle a gank, your best option is always going to be to play defensive and only capitalize at the times when it would be best, and making all the right choices when you do that. So you're going to play very defensive. This is a lot, in many ways, focused on 4v4, of course, because that's where gear stats come into play. So that's where this matters. So if you're thinking like, oh, maybe I won't get ganked, like why would I really always be considering the gank? It's because you are going to get ganked, because stats only take play in 4v4 mode, and you are inevitably going to end up in a 1v2, 1v3, or 1v4, no matter what you do at some point in time. Unless you're rolling with the full party, but even if they die, you're the only one left, things are still going to happen. So that's why you do that. because ultimately when it comes down to it, you're going to need to play defensive when you're getting ganked, and that's the most important thing with stats. So that's why I have the regen high, so that way while you're playing defensive, you're gaining more stamina back constantly. And this is going to be the blade. So right now, of course, attack is maxed again. 5.4% is going to be the best value you can get out of that. And then defense penetration is going to be the secondary. That's because defense penetration, what it does is it negates the opponent's defense stat by whatever percentage your penetration is at. So if they have 15% defense across all 3 armor pieces, which is actually about the max you can get anyway, and I have 13.1% defense penetration, that's basically going to make their 15% defense go down to 2%, because that negates the defense stat that they have. So that's a very important stat and is much better than block damage, most definitely. If you go with block damage, which I have in the past, you're not going to experience as good of a result, guaranteed. Next piece here is going to be the hilt, or the 5th piece in the lineup. It all depends on your character, of course. But attack, again, is prioritized here, and the best stat you're going to get is 6.7%. Execution health regen is going to be low. That's because these new characters, they have very low health bars to begin with. Centurion only has 4 bars. Shinobi's got like a little bit over 3. Really no health there. So you get almost all your health back on execution anyway. You don't really need that regen stat. I still get like 2 bars, or I think it's like 1 bar, but with the feat that they both have, which I believe is called Bounty Hunter, you're going to get immediate health the second that you kill them, and then that execution health regen as well. So even if it's negative, basically you're going to end up having a full health bar by the time you finish that execution, even with negative execution health regen stat, if you do have that Bounty Hunter feat on. And then revive speed. A lot of people, when it comes to this piece, they'll kind of think more of for themselves rather than the team. But the team is always going to be prioritized in reality. That's what you should do. That revive speed is going to allow you to get them up faster in those scenarios where you're breaking. They didn't get an execute off on your teammate and you really need some help. Or it's elimination and they died, didn't get executed. Definitely going to want to get them back up, especially if you're about to get ganked. Try and avoid the gank if you can, of course. But ultimately, you got to do what you got to do. But definitely revive speed going to be the secondary for that one. Especially for these new characters. That can kind of go a little bit differently with the original 12. So this is really prioritized around Shinobi and Centurion. Last piece here for this character is the guard. Max attack stat. This one gives you 8.1% at max value. So that's going to be the biggest attack bonus you get. And it's definitely what you want to have, because it goes down very quick. Now I'm going to show what I mean when I say prioritized. I'm going to show some other stats here. So what you see here, I have attack and revenge gain in the plus. Revenge mode attack is going to be the negative. Right here I have the same thing, except my attack is a little lower than it is on the other piece, and my revenge gain is higher than it is on the other piece. That's where the prioritization comes in. You want to make sure you have that correct stat, because with this new system with percentages, it gives you a better idea of what is actually taking place. However, the only downside is it's hard to tell which piece you have as far as how the stat lays out. It can be a little hard to tell which one is the priority of attack or which one's the priority of the gain. So what it looks like here is basically the best you're going to get is 6.0% if it's the secondary. The revenge gain is the primary on this piece, so I'm getting 25.3. I was rolling with that for a little while. Ultimately, I decided 2.1% attack is a little more important than 6% gain, because I still gain genuinely pretty fast with 19%. I really don't need that extra 6 compared to that 2% base attack. So I would definitely recommend this statistic here. And of course, explanation as to why that is. This is going back to just about the beginning. This is very important and ties in with that. The revenge gain is going to be high, of course, because you want to gain it a lot faster. You have that duration low, so that way it doesn't last super long. When it ends, you immediately are back in a scenario where you can gain revenge again, and you definitely want that to be high, so that way it comes very quickly, so that way you can handle a gank. This is really oriented towards getting ganked, because that's, of course, what gear stats are all about, defending. And that's just what you really need to be focusing on, since these only take play in the 4v4 modes. And then the attack is low. That's going to be because ultimately you want the priority stats on your gear piece. So you have to take one in the negative. Of course, you'd rather have attack in the positive than not, definitely. But in this scenario, to get the best out of what you can, it's worth having negative because your duration is going to be low anyway. So that way you can keep popping more revenge and getting it fast and gaining more health, surviving longer. So your revenge mode attack being low is because you're not going to have too much time in revenge, but even if you do capitalize while in revenge and get a hit or two off, it's still going to do basically the same amount of damage it would as normal. So like a heavy from this character normally takes 1 bar from an enemy. With my revenge mode attack stat low, in the negative and getting a decrease, doing a heavy, I still get a full bar of damage off an enemy even when I'm in revenge mode. So it's really not all that bad as it seems, and ultimately the gain and the base attack are much more important in the way that this stat layout is set up. And also these are very focused on having gold gear, so the epic rarity, of course that's going to be the most important. That's what you're seeking for currently. That's the highest tier. So the other ones, to be honest, I would just try to grind through, get straight to epic as soon as you can, and that's when you should really be using those materials and your steel, because I mean, for the most part, temporary gear isn't all that worth spending your steel and money on, unless, you know, maybe you're paying money for steel, you got money to spend, you got a lot of salvage from previous characters like I do, since this is a knight. However, for the shinobi being a samurai, didn't have quite as much salvage, so definitely something that I wanted to save as I progressed through to rep 5 so that I could get that gold gear and be able to upgrade it as soon as possible. It takes a very large amount of material to upgrade these pieces. I believe it's somewhere between maybe about 2,500 to 3,500 salvage per piece, maybe even a little more. I know like the last level to get from 23 to 24 is going to take 960 points of salvage, so that in itself is quite a bit. So that's why definitely just focus on that epic gear. It's all that matters as of right now until they release a new tier, which will probably be in a few months if they do keep doing that. But definitely this is going to be the best layout overall for these new characters. This is just a full glance. As you can see, this is a part of version 1.08 that just came out today. So they changed the color of it. It used to be kind of like a glossy white to look like a platinum or a diamond color almost. Now it's like a minty green. So that's going to be the new change with the color, but this is still the golden gear at max stats. And that's what it looks like overall. And I'm just going to showcase the shinobi really quick as well. Have the same thing for him, because he really ultimately falls in the same boat as the Centurion, not being a tanky character, and being one where you just kind of want to get out damage, but it can be hard to survive a gank on your end because you have such low health, which is why you really want to prioritize that revenge mode defense, that revenge mode gain, and have that duration low, because you want it to cut off pretty quickly so you can start gaining again to proc another health regen from the actual revenge mode itself. So that's going to be it. It's just a little explanation to help anybody out there who's been having some trouble, not too certain on where to go with their gear stats. I've seen some gear stats videos, not too sure if anybody has done anything exactly like this, but everything you see here is tested. I've tried other gear layouts, and this is definitely the best bet for these new characters. Definitely the best. You're not going to get a better result out of anything else, I can guarantee that.